Hey everyone, welcome back to the Walks of Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do yourself one teeny tiny little favor and make sure to give us a follow because I don't want you to miss out on any of the amazing guests I got coming on this year. And without further ado, the lady I have on today, I actually got to meet her at an event. So back in 2023, it was. I got to speak at an event down in February for President's Day. It was a real estate conference and it was a really dope event. And I actually got to speak there. And after towards the end of the event, I got to meet her. And since then, we connected. I had an opportunity to hop on her podcast. We stayed in touch. And now we finally have her on my podcast. So, Rosemary, for anyone who hasn't had the pleasure to get to know you, to get to meet you yet, tell us your quick elevator pitch before we hop into your story. Who are you and what do you do?
Hey, thanks, John, for having me on the podcast. I am Rosemary Lewis, your real estate bestie. And in short, I went from being an elementary school teacher to a real estate broker, and now I get to coach women all over the country in helping them build amazing real estate businesses that they love, but also honoring God in the process. So that's who I am, and that's what I do.
Amazing. So before we get into all the amazing stuff I know you're doing now, I know you're doing conferences, you're speaking, and you have your podcast yourself. You're doing a whole bunch. Take us back in the time machine before real estate, before teaching. What was little Rosemary like growing up? Were you always this like super energetic, entrepreneur person? Like, what was it like growing up?
Oh, you take me back. Okay, so I was born in 1980. Ooh, I know you're younger. So I grew up on the south side of Chicago in the 90s, and it was the best and the worst, if that makes sense, right?
Mhm.
I had a great childhood in terms of, living in a neighborhood where everybody knew each other, kids played outside until it wasn't that safe to play outside anymore. And I have some friends, like my very best friend that I had growing up. She is still my friend today. We always say we were friends before we could even say friend. For 44 years, we've been rocking and rolling. But my childhood was actually mirrored with a lot of tragedy and trauma, I guess you would say,
Mhm.
because by the time I was 15 years old, five of my siblings passed away. Um,
Okay.
I don't think you knew that about me, John. So,
No.
in short, my mother's first husband passed away from cancer, and each child, they had three children together. Every child they had together ended up having cancer. I have a sister who passed away from a brain aneurysm, and then another brother who was murdered. So, while I had a great childhood, there was definitely a lot of grief, a lot of confusion, just a lot of challenges around growing up. And what particularly happened to me, especially with my brother who was murdered, I was 13, he was 15. For a long time, I just thought that I just needed to kind of play it safe, like not do anything big and bold with my life because
Mhm.
I should just be grateful to be alive. So that kind of had me stuck for a lot of years. So while my personality was always what it was, there just were some limiting things, just some
Mhm.
things that I went through growing up that I definitely had to unpack my junk and deal with it in
Yeah.
order to become who I'm becoming right now.
No, 100%. So kudos to you for, figuring yourself out and taking the time to work on yourself to get through that because that is one of the things. I say we all have our challenges. One of the ones that I personally haven't dealt with yet is loss. And so it's
Hmm.
like, it's this stuff that I've always think about. It's like deep thoughts. Literally the other day, I was literally on a little bit of a riff on IG, just scrolling. And like, I always spend a lot of time thinking about life and why we're here and what it is that, our purpose is. And that's one of those concepts that I just have not been able to really grasp yet. I lost a friend that I worked with for 3 years. Worked at a restaurant job together. He took his own life. God bless
I'm
his
so
soul.
sorry.
But
Yeah.
that was about to be 2 years this September, and I still remember when I got the news for that. It just felt so surreal. Like
Yeah.
I really didn't know. I only been to two funerals too, so it's like it's one of those concepts I can only imagine what it was like to go through it. Not once but five times
Yeah.
while growing up. So take us through. Fast forward a little bit. So you're growing up, and you said around 13 is when you decided to play it safe. You still had the same energy, the same super energetic, lively person, but now you have these belief around life. Like, all right. Um, I gotta play it safe. I gotta be grateful to be here. What was life like post high school? What was it? Where did you turn from there? Did you eventually go straight down like the teaching path, or did you kind of stumble into that?
No, absolutely. I actually I always wanted to be a teacher. When I was in school, in elementary school, I remember we used to have spelling tests and teacher manuals, and my teacher would let me grade papers. I always imagined myself being a teacher. Then when my brother was murdered, he was actually murdered by a 14-year-old, right? And I
Oh
just
man.
remember thinking to myself, because I had such great teachers that cared about me, but really taught me the value of life. And I
Mm,
remember thinking he couldn't have had great teachers, because if he had great, that's the way I rationalize it in my mind. Like, if he had great teachers, there's no way he could have hurt us in this way, right? Even if him and my brother were beefing, he would have found another way to work it out, right? So
mm,
for me, I was like, nah, I definitely have to be a teacher, because I can be that person
the impact.
for for another kid. And then especially thinking through to teach in inner city Chicago, it was a no-brainer. That literally is what I thought my life would be. I thought that I would graduate college, maybe get a master's degree. I did do that. Teach until I retire and die. I thought that that was what my life would be, but there were other plans for me.
Yeah. So you got into teaching eventually, and from there, what was it like teaching inner city? So I grew up inner city as well, and so similar to you, like I always had really solid teachers. I remember up until sixth grade, I remember every single teacher. From
Hmm.
sixth grade on, there's some that kind of slipped through the cracks, but for the most part, I remember most of my teachers, and there was only maybe a few that I didn't really like that much. Part of it was more so the class than it was the teacher themselves.
Yeah.
For example, I was never a big fan civics. Like nothing against my teacher that year, I just didn't like the subject for all that,
Yeah.
or at least how it was presented to me, right?
Right.
But that was one of those subjects where it's just I remember my chemistry teacher, but mainly chemistry was also another subject that I like. I had there was no joy going to chemistry class in high school, like absolutely zero. But for the most part, I remember each and every one of my teachers. I remember uh, my third grade teacher, Mrs. Lombardi. I still remember a little bit of her retirement speech. We were like one of her last. I think she wanted to travel
Huh.
the world. I remember being in the back of the classroom just bawling in tears because she was
Aw.
retiring and that was going to be her last year. But similar to what you were saying, teachers has so much of an impact, and it kind of sucks kind of for parents because even no matter how you raise your kids, you're not with them majority of the time. For
Yeah.
most, at least unless you're homeschooling or some other scenario, but for most of the time, it is the teachers that are raising these children a lot of the time. Because by the time it's especially if they're playing sports, you go to school, you play your sports, you do some homework, you eat dinner, and then by that point, you're already drained. You don't have much left in the tank, so there's not much bonding to do with your people at home. And
Yep.
so, to your point, teachers have a really big role and impact because I remember. Did I ever tell you my quote my Plato quote that I love quoting all the time? About the duty of the
Maybe.
enlightened is to enlighten the unenlightened.
No, I don't think you told me that.
Oh yeah, so that came from my 12th grade English teacher. He ended up having some disease or something like that. I think some issue with his lungs. My school had mold, so I think
Mm.
something flared up, and he ended up leaving before Q1 even ended, and I didn't get to see him the rest of the year. But he would go on random philosophical tangents. And one day we're watching Plato's Allegory of the Cave, and I heard that quote: "The duty of the enlightened is to enlighten the unenlightened." Now, at
Mm.
that time, I wasn't entrepreneurial. I wasn't thinking about business or anything like that. But once I did, that kind of helped become I guess the core belief, I guess the
Yeah,
core
like
value.
a
Yeah,
mantra
the
for you
mantra.
in your
Yeah,
business.
exactly. Like the
Yeah.
core mantra of because in my own words, as soon as you learn something, it's your moral obligation to put everybody on game and share it
Amen.
with as many people as possible. And so it's for me, that's part of the reason why I wanted to start the podcast, despite it having nothing to do with my business at all. I was like, no, I got to document the journey. I can't wait until I quote unquote made it. I got to give something back. So
Yep.
uh, to your point, I say all that to say that I agree with you 100%. Teachers have such a big impact. And one time I actually posted, I think, that Plato quote, and he commented on my Facebook page. I think he had me as a
Ah.
friend. And so my 12th grade teacher, he commented on it. Um, but yeah, so it's pretty crazy how the world works. But all right, so to get back to you, so you got into teaching inner city Chicago. What was that like? I know there's a lot of misconceptions about Chicago and how violent it actually is and whatever. So what was it like actually being a teacher in the school system there?
Yeah, I we're talking I can't even believe it. We're talking 20 years ago now, right?
Yeah.
When I started my teaching career. So back then it probably wasn't as dangerous. I mean, or maybe I was just immersed in it, so I didn't realize how dangerous it was. But there were rules around the danger, right? I
Yeah.
remember, I remember when I was teaching, like the head gang people would call our principal and say, "Hold dismissal, we're having a shootout," right? So they had respect for the
Yeah.
children that were there. But it really was enlightening because what I realized firsthand is exposure is everything. And we had, like, I had the most brilliant children because, like, I taught inner city Chicago. And then later on in my career, I taught, moved to Texas, and I taught in very affluent communities where, like my students got private jets stay on in the weekend, but the children were the same, right? Like the children had the same challenges. They had the same zeal and eagerness to learn. But it's really on what they had access to and what the exposure was. And my heart definitely broke. I never forget this one time we were doing a study on continents, like a world study. And my students, our we were studying Asia, and as a culminating activity, I was like, oh, let me take them to this hibachi restaurant, right? We're going to go and let them
Yeah.
have this hibachi experience. And when there was, like, when you go to hibachi, they're cooking up the stuff and the
Yeah.
lighting the fire. There was a little girl who went under the table and she was hollering and crying because it scared her so bad. But it really wasn't the experience. She'd never been to a restaurant before, right? Because
Yeah.
so many of my students, like, they live their entire lives within like 1 square mile of their homes. So just going to a restaurant. So when you think of different things like standardized tests, when they're talking about the mountains and the national parks, and I think about my students in Texas, they had that prior knowledge, that schema, because they've been on vacation and they'd seen mountains and they'd seen skiing and like things to help them understand the text a little better. Whereas it
Yeah.
wasn't that my other kids weren't as bright, but they didn't have the different access to different experiences. And that was probably the biggest difference. But I love teaching where I taught. I love the kids. It definitely was challenging, lots of different behavior issues, but in both aspects, right? In both
Yeah.
aspects of the career. But it just really gave you an appreciation for the children. However, like, this might be getting political. I do think that the system sets children up to fail.
Yeah.
In those inner city environments, as an elementary school teacher, I don't care how great you are. If there are 38 children in your kindergarten class, yeah, there are going to be gaps. You know what I mean? So there are just certain things where there was a statistic when I was in school that said the predictor for how many prisons to build in Illinois was based on the third grade standardized test, right? And
That is nuts
with
that there's even a correlation.
isn't that, but I understand it, because if the school systems are crowded, if we don't have proper parent education, all of these different things that are related, they don't seem related, but they really are related. It doesn't surprise me, like, after teaching in the inner city, it doesn't surprise me the problems that we see with violence, especially in an area like Chicago, because honestly, the schools were not resourced, the parents were not equipped, the kids were not as exposed as much as they should be. And I do think that in a lot of ways, there is systematic racism that you see evident in the school system.
Yeah.
And it's disheartening. It's very sad, but it is a reality. And I saw that firsthand.
Yeah. I agree to your point. I think my first time going to rest, I don't remember. It had to be, I think, middle school, I think. Like for me, like so I grew up inner city. We grew up in the projects. And so like we didn't have much growing up. I remember my eighth or it was I think seventh grade year, eighth grade year. One of my boys had a summer house in the Hamptons. Well, his dad's boss had a summer house in the Hamptons. We got to spend a week out there. And
Hmm.
like that was such a culture shock. Like
Yeah.
it was stupid to think about how much, especially back then. To your point, I don't think I went to my first restaurant until I think my eighth grade football banquet. Might have been my first restaurant I've ever gone to. It was one of my kids on the team, his like owned like a local Italian spot. So like I didn't even get my first phone until like my junior year of high school. It's because my
Yeah.
friends got it for me. So it's like I relate to everything that you're saying because I kind of went through it. Um, not, not that long ago. I still remember like it was yesterday. The pandemic years don't count, so
Yeah,
it feels like just
yeah.
yesterday I was in high school, right? And so but yeah, I remember going to the summer house in the Hamptons. Like they had just in the downstairs alone. Like you go down the stairs, there was like 5 queen size beds. There's like a ping pong table on the right hand side, and you go to the left hand side, walk down this little hallway, and like in there's like a 12 seat movie theater. There's like a sauna room, a little yoga room, I think like a bathroom, and then you walk to the end of that hallway. Then it was like a freaking a gym the size of like a a training room, I guess. It was pretty decently sized, like in the house gym. That's just in the bottom floor in the basement.
Yeah,
Around the
yeah.
house,
Just a different life.
yo, and they had a jacuzzi, a pool. They had half court, a full court basketball hoop, and a tennis court. And then around the entire premise was like a paved, like rocky, like gravel track for like go karts and stuff like that. And I
Hmm.
was just like, in mind, this is like my 7th or 8th grade year, and I was like, man, these people have like more money than I could even make sense of at the time.
Yeah.
But I think that really helped out a lot because, as you said, exposure. I think I
Yep.
got to see both sides. I think I saw that there's more to it. I think it didn't come into play until later on in life, but I'm glad that I was able to experience and see 2 different sides of everything. And so, all right, to come back to the story, fast forward a little bit. What made the point? Like, what was that turning point where you decided? You said you moved to Texas. You were still teaching. While you were in Texas, I guess it happened. What was the point that made you lead into real estate?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting story. So I met my husband actually in high school, which is crazy because this year I met him 30 years ago this year. I can't even believe that it's been that
Congrats.
long. Thank you. Thank you. We've been married 30 years, but we've been together 30 years. But he's always been entrepreneurial, right? He's always been the person who, wanted to push the envelope, wanted to, he didn't know what he was going to do to make money, didn't know what the direction would be, but he knew that like he wasn't fit to work for somebody, and entrepreneurship was just in his blood. So early in our relationship, when he's a couple years older than me, he left college early, figured out it wasn't for him, and he got into real estate flipping. We had our first son in the year 2000, and the first year that when we had our son, he flipped his first house. He wanted me to get my real estate license purely to assist him, right? Like I had no desire to be in real estate. I was fine being a teacher. I just wanted this boring, settled life. As a matter of fact, it kind of annoyed me that he wouldn't just go get a job, right? Just so we can be regular. So I got my real estate license and I did okay. I was doing it dual career, part time, primarily to list his properties. But then when the market crashed in '08, we lost a lot of property. We had to foreclose some stuff. I was like, cool. Like, are you ready now to just live this plain life that we can live? I got out of real estate and that didn't last long. He ended up starting another business. That other business afforded him the opportunity to get back in real estate. So then we moved to Texas. So when we're in Texas, he's like trying to find his way in the real estate market, but it's so different from Illinois that what worked for him there, it wasn't working here. So he tried to, get his license to be an agent, and, flipping wasn't working. He finally landed on an investing strategy called wholesaling.
Mhm.
But in the meantime, I literally just had a moment with God one day at church where my husband, it just really seemed like in his business, he would go like take 2 steps forward and fall 1 step back. And there seemed to be a missing piece to his business. And I knew that the missing piece to his business was my skill set, but I was unwilling to do it, right? Because I had the stable income, I had the insurance, blah, blah, whatever. But then I was at church one Sunday and I clearly heard the Lord say, go help. And this is how I know that it's because I am up until this point completely risk averse. Um, I just I don't make decisions like this. And God was actually preparing me. So, because even the way that we moved to Texas, right, was totally outside of who my natural character was. Because remember, I lost all my siblings. I'm my mom's only living child. So the fact that I would leave home already
Mhm.
was like a work. But I told him, like, hey, I think I'm supposed to go get my real estate license. And my husband was so scared to say something because he didn't want to change my mind. He immediately drove home, used one of our credit cards that was already maxed out, enrolled me in real estate school. And that was it. Like I said that, okay, like I kind of bargained with God. I'm like, okay, if I pass the test before I'm supposed to renew my teaching contract, then I won't renew my contract. I passed the test, right? Okay, if this happens and that, like everything kept happening for me to honor my commitment of going full time. So I went into real estate full time, no savings, no plan, no idea. I thought I would work with my husband. I don't even work with him. Never have really. But that was like the catalyst that got me into the real estate space.
That's so dope. It's crazy that you mentioned that. I got into real estate myself because of wholesaling. I don't think I
Yeah.
mentioned that yet, but
I think you told me that. I think
I
you told me
think
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was very, very, very short lived. But that's originally what got me into it. And so I'm really excited to talk to you now that we're kind of caught up to speed with how you got to where we're at today with all the stuff that you got going on, because like you're doing it so different than most other realtors. Like you have
Oh.
a brand, which is like most realtors don't like at all. What's like a brand to them? I don't even know if most realtors even know how to define the word. But like you have an
Yeah.
actual brand, which is like so dope to see. Like this bestie movement that you kind of got going on, the real estate besties. Like I'm your real estate bestie. Even when you introduce yourself today,
Yeah.
um, like that all kind of like built into this things. And you guys said you're doing conferences, you have the podcast, you're doing coaching, all that stuff. So like you're not only able to make money off of like selling houses, but like you're growing this community of people. And so like, did you always kind of have like this vision of like, is it building a community, or did you just happen to eventually get like everything else you stumbled into it?
Yeah. No, well, I wish I could say I stumbled into it. God is just gracious. So absolutely
Yeah.
not. Got into this business, and from being a realtor that it's not
Hmm.
easy. It
Yep.
looks a lot easier on the internet and on TV than it really is. So I got my butt whooped. However, it was working out. Like my first year, I broke six figures. Um, and what started to happen is, and this is a part that I didn't give, like,
Hmm.
even me going into real estate, there was a tug of war because remember, me getting into teaching was more than just about collecting a paycheck. It was almost like homage to my brother who was murdered, right?
Hmm.
So I worried that going into real estate, people would think, I'm thinking about what everybody gonna think. Are they gonna think I'm greedy? Are they gonna think I'm just in it for money? Am I not honoring my brother's legacy? But I just felt a pull to be in the space. Well, fast forward to, starting to experience some success. People are asking me, like, okay, what are you doing? Like, how are you getting your listings? How are you doing this? How are you doing that? And I was like, I need to teach a course at the time. I'm still big on habits. Like, I'm always
Yeah.
like, what you do on a daily, repeated basis is what's going to get you your results. So I decided to do a course on time blocking. So sexy, such a sexy topic,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I took a course that taught me how to do a course. And in that course, she talked about the fact that before you sell something like a digital course,
Mm.
what's more important than when you're selling the course is what you're doing when you're not selling. So she's like, you need to start showing up on Instagram Live or start a podcast or something where you are giving value to your audience weekly. And then, like, I needed to deposit something in them before I pull back and sold. So I
Mm.
started doing this weekly Instagram Live. And in the Instagram Live, I would say, tag your real estate bestie, right? I'm like, go ahead, tag your real estate bestie. She needs to hear this too. I'm going to break down, how to host an open house or 3 mistakes real estate agents make, like, blah, blah, whatever.
Yeah.
Fast forward to right after the pandemic, I was like, why am I putting all the proprietorship of this content on Instagram? It's hard to pull it off. It's hard to repurpose it. So I decided to start a podcast. And I was like, what am I going to call it? Like, what should I call the podcast? I don't know. I was
Mhm.
like, the real estate teacher, agent education. And then it dawned on me, like, girl, you've been saying real estate bestie for 2 years. Just call it real estate bestie. And
Mhm.
from there, we've grown a community.
That's so dope to see how it all came together. So this is around pre-pandemic, leading into the pandemic, and a little bit coming out of it, right? Is when it's always
Yeah.
kind of taking place.
Yeah, so I didn't really brand real estate bestie until 2020, September 2022
Hmm.
was when real estate bestie was born. I was showing up and I was doing courses, but real estate bestie was born in September 2022.
So I'm curious. The course you took, you said was that Amy Porterfield by any chance?
Yep. Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Amy's
I
the
haven't taken
goat.
her course, but I've heard a lot of good things in the course space. And she was with Kajabi, which is the platform I use. Do you use Kajabi as
I
well?
use Kajabi now. Yeah, I know she
Yeah,
went to Searchy.
yeah. I think she
I
knows like the
haven't.
founder or something like that. I forget what.
Yeah, yeah, Stu McLaren or whatever.
Mm,
Yeah, so I use Kajabi, and I use Kajabi because I was with Amy. So like the best investment that I made,
hmm
like I literally that $2,000 investment that I made into Amy's course is what birthed this movement that you see today.
That's
So,
amazing. I think one, there's so many lessons in there alone, right? It's like one, finding something and just kind of sticking with it. You said real estate bestie. You said you were saying it for like 2 years. Didn't know really what it was, but like it ended up turning into something. And it's like I feel like God kind of gives you that like inspiration. For example, the name
yep,
for Walk to Wealth, Stop and Stare Media. I think every time I came up with a name for something, it was like I was completely blank faced, and it was like boom, and just God just put it in my heart, and I just ran with it, and it's always played out well when it
yep,
comes to name and stuff. Um, and but then also too, investing in yourself, not just for your real estate business, but like in other areas for you to grow even further. I feel like a lot of times, a lot of real estate agents in general trying to, they kind of like put themselves into a box. They're only learning like open house or,
yep.
cold call. And it's like, well, if you're just doing what everyone else is doing, you get the results that everyone else is getting. And so, like, how can you take what people in other industries are doing and apply it to what you got going on to give you some sort of competitive edge? Like, I think, for at least the way I think about marketing, like I learned a lot from like old school direct response marketers or people that
Yep,
learn from old school direct response marketing. But I just so happened to also grow up with like social media. And so it's like I
yep.
kind of got this like new age experience with like this old school fundamentals. I kind of get to combine the best of both worlds. And then AI came about. And so like now I have all these different perspectives that I gain. I'm just kind of meshing them all together to find my unique voice. And so you made that investment into Amy's course. And then from there, that just kind of helped you get started with your course. And so, like, what was that like launching, putting that together, and how was it when you originally like put it out into the world? How was it received?
Oh gosh, well, it was scary, first of all, because I really didn't know what I was doing. There were so many components to it. And at the time, my friend, she was still teaching. She helped me just really go through everything. And on my first launch, though, I made over $10,000.
That's dope.
And yeah, and the course price was like $497. And I don't even think like it was $497, but like I gave a discount for so
Hmm
many people, but we made 10 grand. And I'll never forget, like when I did that first webinar and the way that I had the webinar, like I didn't have my volumes like down on my computer. So every time
Yeah.
somebody paid, I could hear like a ding, 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 ding. And I'm just like trying to hold it together on the webinar. And I just remember at the end, my friend and I, we FaceTime each other and we were just bawling. Just like it worked, right?
Yeah.
So it was amazing, and like I saw the power of how far you can go with your intellectual knowledge,
hmm
and it's just been a blessing. And on the flip side, that was like my lesson where the Lord was like, see, you thought getting into real estate was going to like you would have to abort your teaching gift, but what he was really doing was he setting me up so that I can teach nations, right?
Yeah.
So I tell people all the time, like, well, even when I was real estate full time, I still am actively selling, but not as much as before because I have a team. I've grown a team now. But I would say that I went from teaching little people, right, to teaching big people how to buy and sell homes. Well, now I get to teach women all over the country. I've at this point coached over 100 agents on how to build business, how to build their confidence, how to, be firm in their faith, in their business. And I'm just like, okay, God, I see you and I'm here for it, right? Because I just know what taking that first step is. And to your point, at the time that I bought Amy's course, I hate to say this, John, and this is one thing that I told you that I admire about you, especially being your age, is that I did not understand the value of investing in my personal and professional development, because I grew up in an age where we really didn't pay for not, you
hmm
know what I'm saying? It was almost like if somebody like out, like I'm trying to figure out what the scam is, right? You
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
charge me
Yeah.
something like, or I'm trying to size somebody up instead of actually understanding that you can fast track fast track your success. And I'm master's educated. I got my college degree, but I will tell you the investments that I have made in different courses and masterminds and putting myself in the right rooms
Mhm.
have helped me to far outpace my success than I did going the traditional route. And making that first investment of $2,000 was like my first taste of, I don't know how this is gonna work out, right? I
Mhm.
don't know this lady from a bag of rocks, but she's offering what seems to be a solution to my problem. And I made it less about her and more about investing in who I desired to be. And yeah, that's a big reason why you see, like, it's on my vision board. Amy's on my vision board every year. One day I'm gonna meet her and I might, like, I hope I don't give her an open mouth kiss because if y'all know Amy, tell her to hit me up, the Real Estate Bestie on IG. Tell her I love her, and I appreciate her real big.
Yeah, no, it's so dope to hear that because like I feel like I think culturally it's something. I think being in the north kind of plays a bit, and like closer to like the northeast plays a big factor. Like you're always like,
Skeptical.
yeah, skeptical. You're
You're like,
always looking around like who's out to get you. How do you make this person? I don't know. It's so kind of like deeply ingrained. I don't know how or like
where we get it from?
where we get it from, but like yeah, just how it is. I guess kind of. But like for me, I think the biggest blessing is like going to KW, and the reason being is because they make you pay for everything. So like I just
Yeah,
thought that was the norm.
yeah,
Knowing now is a little annoying, but like for the timing of everything, me going into that, I was like, oh, you just have to pay. If you all the top agents are doing this, I just gotta pay for everything. And like,
yeah,
mind you, I have no money for anything at that point in time. I'm like, this is what the best are doing. I guess I got to. So it wasn't like for me. It wasn't like a big decision or thought process of like, oh, should I invest in this? It was just like, and it's just kind of like the norm.
yeah,
And I just kind of like
yeah,
went from there. I didn't really question it all that much because I knew myself. Like I knew I was getting into a space where I knew nothing about, and so I was
yeah,
just like, what I'm gonna do is sit here and be skeptical and ignorant. Like
yeah,
I could either be one or the other, right? And so I was like, well, screw it. I just pay for everything. And then as I got into like the entrepreneurship and the digital marketing and all that stuff, and like the funnels, the courses, all that stuff, then by that point I was already a year into a year into KW. So
yeah,
like, man, I don't pay for Bold. I don't pay for all the extra training. I don't pay the market fees. I don't pay my commission split. I don't pay the 6% royalty. Like everything is coming out of my pocket. I can't make no money. Like, and I gotta
yeah,
pay taxes on top of that. So
yeah,
I was indoctrinated in a good way, I guess you could say. And then as I got into like I said, my own online business and coaching, I think I already shared with you the story, but like it took me a little minute before I ever actually made any money teaching, and people were asking me to, but I was just like, I almost didn't feel kind of worthy of like
yeah.
charging people for it. So like when you were thinking about like pricing, like how did you come across that that 497 thing? How did like what was like going through your mind around that time, especially because you're coming from a even though teaching is teaching, whether it's online or in person, it's kind of
Yeah.
different because like you're not charging the individual students when you're teaching in a school, like
No.
to take your class, but like for in our online education space, we are. So it's like
Yeah.
that was a big shift for me. So like, what was that like for you on your end?
It was so hard. And you keep in mind, my teaching salary after taxes, like I was bringing home like $3,200 a month.
Wow.
Right. So there, Amy did give some guidelines in her course on, how you might price, but that same course that, or not this, I don't teach that same course anymore, but a similar course like that I charge 490, the price is double now, right? And if I do it again, it'll probably be 1297. So
Hmm.
once you understand and this is something that I've learned, like, first of all, you need a proven track record.
Yeah.
I do think that we live in an age where everybody wants to be a coach without the proven track record in what they have been doing. So once I figured out, like, you know what, no, there is validity in what I charge because I have gotten results. I now have taught other people and I have proof of them having results, then we're
Yeah.
going to charge that. And I think like my coaching program, it's not my for real coach, it's not, it's not a low amount at all.
Yeah.
But I know that you follow the program, you're going to easily 20 extra investment, right? So but that was a mindset shift in myself, understanding my worthiness, understanding the market, understanding intellectual exchange and how powerful that is, and also investing in myself, right? When
Yeah.
I started investing in myself, doing higher level masterminds, and I'm seeing what's happening inside the groups, I'm like, oh, I know that I'm giving the same or more value, and I need to charge accordingly. And what I found is that if it doesn't cost enough, then you're not going to be taken seriously.
Hmm.
If it's too cheap, you're either going to attract the wrong people, the crab in the barrel people, or the people like for me, if I invest in something, if you invite me to a mastermind and it's not at least $10,000, then I automatically am questioning like how great is the mastermind going to be?
Yeah.
What kind of people going to be in there, right? Because I know that I understand, not to say that I just want you to tax me for the sake of taxing me, but I understand that there should be a value attached to the deliverable that I'm expecting to get from it.
Yeah. No, 100%. I agree with you. The people who pay the most attention, right?
Yep.
And then one of the other things too I noticed, like, it sucks to say this, but it's like it couldn't be, it couldn't be truer. But like the what you charge is gonna attract a different quality of person.
Million
And
percent.
it's like realizing that it kind of sounds so judgmental and so harsh, but it's like from similar to your point. I feel like the more I've charged, like, so full transparency. Dana was my first ever one-on-one coaching client. Like,
Hmm.
I never even offered that. I originally got into, like, I thought I was gonna create a course and that was gonna be its thing. And a quick little funny story about that. So I did a launch in January of last year, and so I was selling my course, and one of the programs, a separate program that I was a part of, they also have a course. Their course is charged at 1,000, but for 3 extra one-on-one calls, it was a self-study course. So if you wanted 3 one-on-one calls plus the self-study course, they upped the price from 1,000 to 3,000. And so I was like, huh, just for 3 one-on-one calls? I'm like, screw it. Next time I did that launch, it was January of 2023. Um, yes, it's been 2 years. Sorry. Oh my god. Wait, no. Was it no, January 2024. I lied. Yeah, because it was 1 month before we met. We met in 2024. So it was last year. I did it. Had an offer where to get my course for 3 plus 3 calls, $3,000. And Dana was actually the first person to take me up on that offer.
Yep.
And so that's how me and Dana got connected. And since then, that's opened up like a whole new world. Like, she's such an amazing person. I got to help her out. I got to meet her. Her admin Gio is super dope too. I love talking to him. But I said, if had that not happened, I probably wouldn't have gotten an opportunity
Yeah.
to speak at President's Day. Wouldn't have met you, and wouldn't have, probably done a bunch of other things, at least in your guys' space. So like, to your point, the more I've charged, I've noticed that the better of people I've been able to
you
connect with.
you you attract a different quality of person, and I tell my coaching students, right, like, okay, if I have an opportunity to meet and collaborate with people, I don't want to go and meet in the real estate space. I don't want to meet with people that only show up at the free title company meeting that's giving away free lunch.
Hmm.
I want to meet with the people that got on the plane, that paid a ticket, you know what I mean? That
Hmm.
that got a hotel, that took time away from work, like those people who made an invest. So not even talking about the people on the stage, yes,
Yeah.
but the people in the room. I want to connect with the people in the room who think enough of themselves and their businesses to
Yeah.
make the investment of their resources and their times. And you're going to have more quality connections from that. So I'm a million percent with you, right?
Yeah.
Because other than that, like, I don't want the people that are just want to be takers, just take, and not feeling like they need to invest. And again, it's not even about what you're investing in. Ultimately, if you're willing to invest in it, that means that you're investing in yourself, your business,
Hmm.
your future, your clientele. And that's who I want to put myself around.
Yeah. I agreed 100. I think, let me know if you kind of, if this was kind of similar for you. I also noticed the more I paid for to invest in myself, the more comfortable I felt charging more money for stuff.
Hands
Because
down.
I think back and I'm just like, man, I don't spend like, for example, on public speaking alone, I probably spent maybe, and to me, this is like an insane amount of money. But on public speaking alone, I probably spent like almost 25,000 over the
Yeah.
past like 3 years, which is like, for me to even think about that, it's like in 2021, I think I made like $12,000 that year alone. So it's
Hmm.
like, to think that I would be spending on just that portion of my business of becoming a better communicator, and it's like, sheesh. But then I go on stage and then like I pitch something and it's like,
You connect.
yeah, it's
You
like,
get the return on your investment every time.
yeah, and not only that, but it's also like then I don't feel as bad for charging. It was so weird. Like my first time ever charging for something, it was like I made $1,000. I think I had like 50 people. I think I charged, what's the math on it, $20 a ticket. I don't know, but I know it came out to $1,000 flat. I forget how many people and what it was priced at. But like even that, and that's not a hot, super low ticket offer. I was freaking, panicking almost at the thought of just
Hmm.
like having any price tag on that. Like, are people still going to show up? Are people gonna, like, what are people going to say? Because as soon as you take people's money, I feel like it holds you to a higher standard, and part of it, I was kind of scared of not living up to it a little
Yeah.
bit, especially
I'm gonna tell
for
you.
that first time around.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you like what was a good shift for me. Is that when I shifted from the thought of selling to serving,
Hmm.
right? And when I think about the fact that, you know what, and not to be, and we minimize it, not to be cocky and da da da, but if there is a woman in real estate, if she
Hmm.
sits down and talk to me for an hour, I guarantee you that I'm going to say something, even if it's an off-beaten comment. I'm going to say something that she can take and make money off of for the rest of her life. So
Hmm.
I have zero issue with charging a $600 $700 for that conversation,
Hmm.
because I know that I am serving. Now
Yeah.
this is where it feels icky when I'm charging you and I don't, and I know that I'm not qualified.
Yeah.
Like if I was to say, "Hey, John, I'm doing an AI conference. Tickets are $1,000." I would feel very icky about that because I know I don't know enough about AI to be out here charging somebody for it.
Yeah.
Okay,
No, 100%.
but in what I'm proficient in, and to serve in the way God has gifted me,
Hmm.
um, it I have more confidence to show up in those spaces. But on the flip side, a good part of what you're saying is I definitely have gained that confidence by making investments in myself, because I know
Hmm.
how making those investments in myself that were hard have transformed my life. So if I
Yeah.
can be part of someone's transformation, I want to do that, but it comes at an investment.
No, 100%. To your point too, the first the one person that made a big shift for me, what they told me almost word for word was like, John, we're not coming to you to learn how to sell houses. We're coming to you to learn how to how to use social media.
Yep.
And that's what kind of made the shift, because up until that point in time, it's like I was still a brand new agent. I did a couple rentals, so I had no track record. But I said I grew up with social media, so I had an
Yep.
understanding of it that most people that were 3 times my senior didn't. And so it kind of
Yep.
started off of that. Still, it didn't charge. It took me a while to, even though I heard the quote, it still took me a while to like internalize that. But then eventually AI came out, and by then I was already investing myself in public speaking classes and workshops. I already taught like social media for a year, and I started teaching AI, and I spent a lot of time learning that when ChatGPT first came out. And then that kind of opened the door for everything else. And then that's when I eventually got into Kajabi, and that whole world kind of opened up. But it was a long process to kind of built this whole line like online coach business,
Yeah.
and it's still like figuring out like coming together and how exactly I want to piece it together, because I feel like you kind of get pulled and tugged in different directions of different ways you can go. Like you probably do a one-on-one coaching business, have that make 6 figures alone. You could do a community, have that be 6 figures alone. You could probably do like any one of these different business models within the online coaching business space and make a 6 figure business. That's where I kind of been tugged. But I feel like the last quarter I just spend a lot more time like getting clarity as to what I want it to look like. And so
Yeah.
to kind of spin it back to you, so kind of got an idea as to where you are with everything. What do you have in store? like, what are you cooking up? Because you're doing a real estate business. You have a team. I know you still got the podcast going strong. You're still doing a lot of the coaching, teaching, and everything. They got the community going. So, like, where does the real estate bestie herself go from here?
Yeah, that is a very interesting question because honestly, wherever God says go, my answer is yes.
Hmm.
And I have, some clarity on next steps. I have made visions of what I think the next few years will look like, but I'm also holding it with an open hand
Hmm.
because if he tells me to shift, I'm ready to shift. But right now, what it looks like is in figuring out what my lane is. So I have determined that I am best at group coaching, which even in my teaching career, right, I was a great teacher, not a great tutor. Right. So we have just different levels in which we are serving the besties in a group coaching format. I just wrote a devotional for real
Okay.
estate agents. So that will be coming out later this year. We have an annual event, the Real Estate Bestie Experience, that will happen in Dallas. That'll be an annual thing that we do. And then when I think of big picture, like I feel like I am at some point going to be called to not just serve women in real estate business, but women in the business space in general,
Hmm.
because Real Estate Bestie has become a different business in itself, right? It's separate
Yeah.
from my real estate business. So I feel like God has given me an opportunity to gain experience in building this online coaching, building business in a different way where my commodity that I am transferring is not houses, it's intellectual knowledge. And as I build my capacity there, I will have an opportunity to now just coach women no matter where they are in the entrepreneurial space. So yeah, that's where we are growing to. And just full transparency, like I'm scared as heck because I know how to do. I know how to buy and sell, help people buy and sell houses. I know how to hit, high six figures, seven figures doing that. This one doesn't have a ceiling, but it also doesn't have the same guarantees that I'm used to. But which is why, it really comes back to my purposeful calling. And I just love how I can look and see how God, he's my thing has always been people, right?
Yeah.
When I was teaching, it was people. When I was selling houses, it was people. When I now as the real estate bestie is still people. My gift has always been teaching.
Hmm.
So that's how he's used me to reach the people. And I'm just like, okay, so what's up? What's next? So I'm just holding it with an open hand.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is "We make plans and God laughs."
Yeah.
Right. So I similar to you, I like to have a vision that's like, all right, what direction are we headed? But like, I know from countless experiences in a few short years that I've been an entrepreneur that literally nothing has played out the way I've drawn it up the first time around. So it just
Yeah.
keeping that open mind, and I'm excited to see everything firsthand and kind of go along with you with this journey, even though I'm across the country, kind of see it firsthand come together and everything. So it's super dope to see. And so I guess where can we find you at so that we can keep up with your journey? Where can anyone that's listening find you at? Or if you have anything to offer the listeners, what you got for us?
Yay. Okay, so I on any platform, I'm on YouTube. You can listen to the Real Estate Bestie podcast on Instagram and YouTube. I am the Real Estate Bestie. So please connect with me there. And you know what? I actually do. I have, if you are in any sort of sales, it's for real estate agents, but it is applicable for any sales. I have a guide, 6 steps to multiple six figures, right? This is walk to wealth. So we want to get those zeros. So if you go to rosemarylewis.com/6, you can get that download. It's a free ebook that I have.
Amazing. Now it's time for our rapid fire round. Famous 5 questions, same five
Huh?
questions we ask every single guest.
Okay.
Question number one is what is the most impactful lesson you learned in life?
Oh, you have to know Jesus for yourself. My mother would always say that.
Amen.
You can't survive on borrowed faith.
What is the most admirable trait a person can have?
Integrity.
If you had to change someone's life but only had one book, which would you recommend?
The Bible.
Amen. What is the legacy that you're working on leaving behind?
Eternal. I know that things that I can teach you, they will pass, right? But just really living a life that models the love of Christ. When you get that, that is the only thing that's eternal, and that's the only thing that will save you. So I want my life to mirror his.
And for anyone that wants to embark on their walk to wealth, what is the first step you recommend they take?
Get clear on how you are spending your time, because it's those daily, those minute little habits, right? You think, oh, I was just scrolling. But if you were scrolling instead of reading, if you make excuses a habit and a lifestyle, then it will be real easy, right? To look up and you're 25 and now you're 40 and you've lived the same experience over and over. So get really, really clear on how you are spending your time, audit it, and just make the choice every single day to work on getting better.
Amen. Well, that's it for the podcast. Thank you all for listening. Make sure to subscribe to podcast again so you don't miss another episode of our amazing guests. We'll see you on the next episode of the Walk 12 podcast.